Now let's talk about this horrific crime that we woke up to today. Well, World War II veteran, 88 years old, senselessly beaten for no apparent reason. All we know is we have surveillance video of the two teens, both African American. What's going on here, Geraldo?
Well, I think that it is relevant. Race matters to say that they are African American teens. We describe criminals as part of the process for identification purposes, but I think what we have to be careful of is to imply that their race was the reason they committed this horrific crime. The fact is that these were probably, the kind of youngsters who come from deteriorated or non-existent families. They exist like wolves. They get their values from rap videos, black, white, brown, yellow, red. It is a decline and fall of a society and of a culture. We have to point it out, but we have to be very careful not to attribute this necessarily to their race. Is this a race-motivated crime? Race matters, of course. But we have to
see what they say when
find
they
out what
talk.
their
Well, so I think that's an entirely fair point. We can draw too broad conclusions from individual crimes, but that, of course, usually happens. You've seen a lot on the left, very much including the president, take interracial crimes to make larger points about racism in America. Here you have a number of interracial crimes recently, and those people have been silent. Double standard?
My point, Tucker, is that I think that in the post-Trayvon era, where conservatives watched as liberals created a narrative, a false narrative of a black boy being victimized by a ruthless white guy, a racist white guy. That was a false narrative in many ways. We saw that, for example, George Zimmerman was Hispanic and not white, so it dulled it, but it didn't in any way mitigate or reduce the reaction of the civil rights establishment, the Reverends Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and the thousands of young people who took to the streets. I think that in the post-Trayvon era, there is a kind of a perverse tug of war going on now. Conversely, conservatives are saying, hey, wait a second, why didn't the liberal media, so exorcised over the Trayvon Martin slaying, similarly take up that bus beating where the 3 black boys beat up the white kid, or the Brunswick, Georgia slaying of the white toddler by the 2 black teenagers? And then you had the Christopher Lane, this awful shooting of the Australian jogger shot in the back.
But real quick, on what happened with this shooting in, these two guys beat the 88-year-old World War II veteran to death. Here's what James Woods said on Twitter. Don't let him die without anyone caring. We are paying attention to what he accomplished and what he did. And for Michelle Malkin, get this, no guns were used. What's the gun-grabbing left's excuse now? Guns not being the problem, because that's what everyone brought up when they thought about what happened at Oklahoma with the Australian 22-year-old baseball player jogging, shot in the back.
I think it is something deeper than the particular weapon used. There is no doubt a deterioration in the family structure. There is an abdication of personal responsibility. There is, since the Great Society, there has been a tendency to attribute responsibility to everybody other than the participant, the player. And I lament those facts. But I also think, and Tucker, you pointed it out, we have to be very careful. Race, yes, relevant, but was this a hate crime? What were the motivations? In Oklahoma City, it looked like their motive was more banal than race.
What about the fact that
it was just a glorification of their own boredom?
Let's talk about sex then. What about the fact that these are all boys? The suspects are male teenagers, and we have I applied for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they told me, thank you, Ainsley, but we don't need any more women. We need male role models in our community, in this culture.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Colonel West really hit it on the head, and that sometimes I think he goes overboard, but not in that regard. There is, and I use the generation of wolves being raised, when you get your values from an MTV video, and you've got the whole baggy pants, which comes from a jailhouse culture, when you have a mindset that you are a rebel against society on the one hand, and then when you start aging out, then society has a requirement to support you and to entitle you. I think there is a disintegration of values, and I wish the president could speak more about it. To me, that's the most important job he can do now. Bring the American family back together. Stop this disintegration. Stop this I'm not responsible for what I do kind of trend that's going on.
He's never mentioned marriage once.
Let's talk